What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Happy Friday to everyone watching. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers and what we learned from OTAs and Mini-Camp. As Mini-Camp just finished this week, this offseason was certainly different for the Green Bay Packers. We're used to the same old with Aaron Rodgers and going through that entire offseason. There has been a big transition to this football team this offseason, so all eyes are on the Green Bay Packers this offseason and how that transition is going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, and overall just this team being so much younger than what we're used to in years past. So in today's video, I want to go over the main things we learned throughout OTAs and Mini-Camp in this early portion of the offseason for the Green Bay Packers. I know a lot of the talking heads believe the Green Bay Packers are going to be a very bad team this year, but I honestly don't think they're going to be that bad. I think it does depend on how Jordan Love plays, obviously, because that is the most important position on your football team. But I feel like this football team is still really talented, and if ran the right way under a Matt LaFleur system and Jordan Love buys into that system, which I believe he will, I think this can still be a pretty decent football team. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they're a 12-win team and they're going to make the playoffs. You know, there's a real chance that the Packers miss the playoffs this year, but it's a growing season. They're going to grow together. They're going to build together. And honestly, I think this year is a good transition year going into 2024, where they're going to have a lot of money, a lot of draft capital, and the second year in the system of Jordan Love and a bunch of other players as well. So I really think the Packers can set themselves up really well for 2024. Even if they don't do too well this year, then they get a better draft pick anyways, and then of course they still have the Jets' first-round draft pick if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of snaps, which he most likely will unless there's any sort of injury. So the Packers could be really loaded going into 2024. But back to 2023, I still think this football team can be pretty good. Like I said, I think there's a lot of talent around this football team, young, fast talent, and we're going to talk about that today. Before we really dive into the OTAs and Mini-Camp, I want to give a big shout out to today's video sponsor. Father's Day is this Sunday, and if you haven't gotten your dad anything yet, don't worry, that's where today's video sponsor comes into play, Manscaped. You and I both know he needs some serious grooming in his life, so grab your dad the Performance Package 4.0 and he'll thank you for helping him tame his beast. It's a win-win situation for both mom and dad. Head to manscaped.com using my code BASS, B-A-S, to get 20% off your entire order plus free shipping. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and perfected their game with the Lawnmower 4.0. Their 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. And you may ask, how is the Lawnmower 4.0 different from other trimmers? This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. This is a great feature if your father or yourself does a lot of traveling. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4,000 lumen LED spotlight on and off for a more precise shave. Have you ever seen a bush sticking out of your dad's nose? Well, the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer is the best nose hair trimmer on the market and a perfect gift for your pops. So go and get your dad a gift you know they will use. Remember, that's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using my code BASS, B-A-S. Don't forget that you came from your dad's balls, so this year show your original home some love with Manscaped. All right, so let's dive right into it. I did coverage on this channel throughout OTAs and Mini-Camp, every session that was open to the media, so I'm going to try to summarize as best as possible, like, the key takeaways, what we really learned from this football team this early portion of the offseason, then going into training camp. I believe it's 41 days away, so we're going to have a period here where there's not much going on, but we got a little bit of a glimpse. And we're going to start, obviously, talking about Jordan Love. And the transition to Jordan Love is a process. There's going to be the ups and there's going to be the downs. There was multiple times during OTAs and mini camps where, in 2-minute drills or 11v11s or even 7v7s, where Jordan Love made some really nice throws. He made some really nice plays. He started to really build a connection with wide receiver Romeo Doubs. He also hit, Christian Watson on some nice throws, Samori Toure, that whole group of wide receivers and tight ends. He's starting to build that rapport with. But there were also times where he didn't make great plays at all. To finish last practice, he threw a horrible interception to Jair Alexander, a poorly underthrown ball. He's thrown a couple interceptions in, other practices, but that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't define Jordan Love, how well he practices in an OTA or a mini camp. But we're starting to finally see Jordan Love as a first-year starter going through the off-season process. And like I said, there's always going to be ups and downs. And it is going to depend also on the pieces around him going into this season. Will Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs take that sophomore jump? Will Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft contribute as rookies? Will the offensive line stay healthy? They have a lot of talent on the offensive line, which we're going to get into here next. But if they stay healthy and protect Jordan Love, he has all the pieces around him for this offense to be pretty good in 2023. Two really solid running backs. The offense as a whole, it just really depends on how Jordan Love plays. And it's not going to be perfect, right? Going into the season, there, like I said, just like training camp, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There's going to be times where you really see Jordan Love's talent and capabilities, and there's going to be times where you go, yeah, he's a first-year starter. But one thing I really noticed going through this offseason period is the team is fully behind Jordan Love. I feel like everyone is fully supporting him, which obviously they should, but I feel like they're very vocal about it. Maybe in years past, Aaron Rodgers was that natural leader. Everyone kind of already knew that, but it seems like this year in press conferences, we have Jair coming up behind Jordan Love and messing with him. There's just a ton of things going on that we're not used to seeing, where players are being very, very vocal that Jordan Love is the guy. The next thing, a big takeaway from OTAs and Mini-Camp, one of my biggest takeaways on offense, is that the O-line has one major competition on that offensive line. So David Bakhtiari is a left tackle. Elton Jenkins is the left guard. Josh Myers is likely the center. John Runyon Jr. is the right guard. The competition that has been the most obvious during minicamp and OTAs is at right tackle between Josh Nijman and Zach Tom. It seemed like every other practice, they were splitting reps with the ones. So if it was Josh Nijman one day, it was Zach Tom the other day. But more importantly for Zach Tom, when he wasn't starting at right tackle in team sessions, he took second team at center. So that, I feel like, is also a competition as well. It's not a given that Josh Myers is going to be the Packers starting center in 2023. If the Packers decide they really, really like Josh Nijman at right tackle, but they cannot keep Zach Tom off the field, Zach Tom's role is going to be at center over Josh Myers. I don't think he takes over for Runyon, and he definitely doesn't take over for Elton Jenkins. But the key with an offensive line is trying to get your best five guys out there that mesh together. And if that's Zach Tom at center, or Zach Tom at right tackle and Josh Myers at center with Josh Nijman as a depth guy, that's what they're going to have to do and figure out. And I'm super excited to watch this offensive line when the pads come on into training camp, when we actually get to watch them take reps against these edge players with the pads on. This is a good problem to have this type of depth on the offensive line. And we haven't even talked about players like Caleb Jones, the second year of Sean Ryan, and even someone like Rasheed Walker. The Packers have a lot of depth on that offensive line, and that's crazy because they didn't even draft one in this draft, but they still have a lot of depth and a lot of talent on the offensive line. And I think it's going to be a top 5 offensive line if it stays healthy, and that's regardless of who they put out there. If it's, Zach Tom's out there, Josh Nijman's out there, or Zach Tom and Josh Myers, or even Josh Nijman and Josh Myers. I feel like any combination of those 6 guys, the Packers are still going to have a really good offensive line. So changing pace, moving over to the defense here for a second, the thing that's been very obvious this early offseason is that right now, Darnell Savage and Rudy Ford are the starting safeties for now. So a lot can change. We haven't seen any real live tackling practices. There hasn't been any pads on, and that would kind of be the easy route, right? We know Darnell Savage and Rudy Ford have the most snaps in terms of guys in that safety room, and they obviously know the system the most compared to everyone else also in that safety room. But other guys have been getting snaps with the ones as well. Jonathan Owens and Tarvarius Moore. Tarvarius Moore was out during minicamp, but during OTAs, he was getting snaps with the ones. And then minicamp, Jonathan Owens, with Moore out, was getting snaps with the ones as well. And those are 2 veteran guys, free agents the Packers signed this offseason, and they 100% could contest for a starting job at safety. But as for right now, it's been Darnell Savage and Rudy Ford with the ones every single practice. So that definitely speaks volume. And I think the Packers still believe in Darnell Savage. And I'm a big Darnell Savage supporter myself. Had a really bad year last year, but I would love for him to turn it around. I'm a huge Rudy Ford guy as well. I know a lot of people aren't fully bought into Rudy Ford being that guy, a full-time starter at safety, but I believe he can be. I thought when he was on the field last year, and was the next man up and his number was called, I think he did a wonderful job. So in terms of what the Packers have in that safety room, I think Rudy Ford is a 100% starter, and Darnell Savage, could be that if he turns it around, but it just really depends on that entire situation. There's also Anthony Johnson Jr., who we haven't heard much from this early offseason. I've seen a couple clips of him, but I don't think he's had any snaps with the ones, but he might take a little bit of time being a 7th round, or a rookie in general, to really learn the NFL, learn the defense. But I've said this multiple times. We might be sitting here week 7, week 8, and Anthony Johnson might be getting a significant amount of snaps. I think that guy has a lot of talent, and I think he could, very well contest for a starting safety spot. Donald Levitt has been out the entire time with injury, but he's more of a special teamer anyways. I don't see him contesting for a starting safety role. And then Ennis Gaines, one of our other safeties, the Packers have been kind of using him in the slot, moving him around a lot. So I think it's really at this point down to Rudy Ford, Darnell Savage, John Owens, Tarvarius Moore, and we'll throw Anthony Johnson Jr. in there for contention at starting safety. Another main thing I really noticed this early offseason was the rotation at edge on defense. So with Rashawn Gary out, the Packers really have to figure out who's going to be their edge opposite Preston Smith. Preston Smith is an obvious starter on the one side, but then you go, okay, who's going to start week 1 if Rashawn Gary isn't ready to go? It looks really promising right now for Rashawn Gary to play earlier than we expect, but are the Packers really going to rush him out there week 1 and give him the full amount of snaps he's used to getting? I highly doubt that. If he plays at all week 1, it's going to be on a snap count. So the Packers are still going to have a guy opposite Preston Smith, and they've been rotating 3 guys this entire offseason. Justin Hollins, Lucas Van Ness, their first-round draft selection, and then also Kingsley Enagbare. Interestingly enough, it has mainly been Justin Hollins who they re-signed this offseason, a free agent, a street free agent they signed during the year last year, and I thought he played decently. I know some people aren't too high on him. I think he's an average edge player. He's not going to wow you by any means, but I think he has the veteran presence and he knows the defense. So if the Packers want to go into week 1 with a guy that 100% knows the system and is ready to go, that's probably going to be Justin Hollins. But Lucas Van Ness has looked great so far this offseason. He's looked super explosive. And then there's also Kingsley Enagbare, who had a nice rookie season as a 5th-round draft selection last year. And there's some other guys in that room as well, like Brenton Cox Jr., who a lot of people are high on, myself included, the undrafted free agent, who some people had as like a 2nd, 3rd, 4th-round guy, but due to character concerns, he fell undrafted. And the Packers ended up signing him, and with the way this edge room is going into the season, he very well could make the team and contest for snaps week 1 as well. So another thing I really noticed was this year, more than I've seen in a lot of past years, this team has a lot of speed. I feel like the whole era with Ted Thompson and then Aaron Rodgers as well, the team was a lot older and they didn't really draft or sign players that were really, really speedy. Like, sure, they had their speed, right? You had guys like MVS, you had guys like even like Trevor Davis back in the day, but I feel like they never truly had a lot of speed. And I think that has changed. I think the demographic of this team in terms of age, athleticism, and speed, they've always liked their athletes, but they are super, super fast this year. And just watching this football team, I feel like a lot of position groups have a very fast player. Luke Musgrave in the tight end room looks as fast as some wide receivers in the NFL. Jaden Reed has a ton of speed. They can move him all around the offense as a wide receiver. We know Christian Watson, one of the fastest players, and being 6'4", 6'5", it's just ridiculous. Bo Melton, also a very fast wide receiver that could end up making the 53-man roster. I'm just not used to having this young and fast football team, but I'm all for it. The next thing that really piqued my interest through OTAs and minicamp was this tight end room is super intriguing. Before the draft, the Packers lost Robert Tonyan to the Bears. It looked like Mercedes Lewis wasn't brought back, and really the only guy in that room was DeGuara and Tyler Davis. And I kept saying before the draft, I was like, I really want the Packers to rebuild that tight end room. Do it differently than we've seen in years past, where sometimes we bring in a veteran tight end that's washed up and doesn't live up to expectations. I mean, there's a lot of guys I can name right now, and they kind of all fit that category. But it is different this year. The Packers spent a 2nd-round pick on Luke Musgrave. They went right back in the 3rd round and selected yet another tight end in Tucker Kraft. And Luke Musgrave has been as advertised. As I was talking in the last category about the speed, Musgrave looks super fast, and I cannot wait for the pads to come on and watch this guy play. And that also includes Tucker Kraft, because he looks like an all-around awesome tight end, an inline guy, physical, loves to block, and is also a really good receiving threat as well. I just love the tight end room right now, and that also includes Josiah DeGuara, who's been getting a lot of snaps with the ones. Maybe he takes a big jump here. He was a huge receiving threat at Cincinnati, even had more total yards than Travis Kelce, so he definitely can do it, and I think he might get a lot of snaps early on, but overall, this tight end room is just so much more athletic than we're used to seeing as Green Bay Packers fans, and I 100% love it. All right, so for the last thing to round this out, we're going to stay on offense, talk a little bit about the wide receivers. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs throughout this early portion of the offseason are clearly wide receiver number 1 and wide receiver number 2. Some can argue Doubs is number 1 just because Jordan Love has connected with him more, but I would say Watson is more so the number 1 because he's going to be getting more of those double teams because the guy is just so damn fast. So the question is, who is going to be that third wide receiver or slot, however you want to put it, depending on what they line up as? Is it going to be Jayden Reed? In my opinion, yes, it's going to be Jayden Reed. But then there's a guy like Malik Heath, who's been doing really well in minicamp and OTAs, but the pads haven't came on yet. But Malik Heath, an undrafted free agent out of Ole Miss, has really stepped up and has taken some snaps in the slot with the ones as well during these practices. And then you have someone like Samori Toure, who the coaching staff has raved about. Wide receiver coach Jason Vrabel has raved about him. Matt LaFleur has raved about him. So Toure could definitely contest for that third role as well. I'm so excited for this training camp coming up for this wide receiver room. Tay Wicks has been hurt a little bit, but he has practiced some. Their 7th round pick, Grant DeBose, hasn't practiced at all, so he's definitely going to have to hopefully fix that up and practice hard during training camp to make this roster as that 6th wide receiver. And I love that Doubs is taking that next year jump in terms of being a leader. I feel like the guy is already a leader in that locker room, and he's just a 2nd-year player. Like I said, I'm super excited for this wide receiver room and the competitions that are going to arise during training camp. There's a lot of talent in this room. So those are the main things I took away from OTAs and minicamp this early portion of the offseason. It's such a different offseason for us Packers fans, and I'm honestly so interested in it, right? Like, I feel like we were just kind of going through the motions the past few off seasons where the same things would happen, and then we'd, go through training camp and the preseason, the same things would happen, and then we'd be at week 1 and, we'd already be in the season. But I'm just so intrigued by the difference this year, this offseason. And I feel like I'm not the only one saying that. It's just a different vibe, and I'm all here for it. I'm excited for this transition. Even if this year isn't the best, I'm still, here for the transition. And I'm super excited to see the direction of this football team. But that about does it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like down below. It supports my channel a ton. I'll catch you on the next one. And as always, go Pack Go.